Hey everyone, welcome to the Jason Wright Show. I am joined today by Tim Morgan, and I'm so pumped to have Tim on the show. Tim, how are you, my man?
Good, Jason. I appreciate the time. This is looking forward. I've been looking forward to this podcast for quite some time.
Well, you and me both for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I've got a little bit of health and wellness envy going on here because what you and your wife, JJ, have built is nothing short of phenomenal in the way of the health and wellness space by bringing like-minded people together that are wanting to tackle longevity and health and wellness and kind of making that transition from lifespan to health span a reality. And there's just and the thing that and it's kind of the way I came into your orbit is just there's a group of us out there that are realizing that in the world of healthcare and fitness and wellness, it's no longer just this luxury, right? Where people just,
Mhm.
some people get to exercise and take supplements and do the things that we geek out on, or they don't. It's an absolute necessity given the environment we live in. And with that, I told you before we got on, I read something on Mark Hyman's Instagram feed this morning that it nearly made my hair catch on fire. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so perfect to launch into this. So I want to get your take before we even, and I want you to introduce yourself and kind and talk about Mindshare. We'll get to that. But this is the kind of stuff we were talking about offline that is just kind of making you realize we almost live in well, we know we live in a mad world. But here's what the
Mhm.
Daily Mail's headline was. I guess it was yesterday. I don't even know when the date of it was, but Mark posted this. It says exclusive. Ultra processed foods do not cause obesity, says US government's top diet advisors. Have you seen this? It brought
Yeah. I saw that one the other day. It's going all over X right now.
oh
And
my
people are laughing at this. Absolutely laughing at it.
and they wonder why. It says
Yeah.
here, news just broke that Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, the DGAC members, are taking a similar tact with respect to ultra-processed foods and its link to America's chronic disease epidemic.
Hmm.
Despite all the evidence collected to date, they're suggesting the science, wait for it, is not conclusive, ignoring mounting scientific evidence to the contrary and focusing on obesity. They push the scientific ball down the road. I mean, Tim, does that not just kind of make the case for why you and I do what we do?
Yes. It is why this country is. I don't know if you know the stats, but 41% of the population is obese,
Yeah.
and almost 80% of the population is overweight or obese. And, this is one of the main issues. I mean, there's a number of issues going on here, but ultra processed foods are engineered for you to eat more. I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but you know, the tobacco companies, Philip Morris, basically these engineers that basically learned how to make, cigarettes addictive are now over in the big food companies, and this is a real problem. That when you see these types of ultra processed foods, it's an easy fix, it's a quick fix, but for them to say that, I mean, this is the same government that basically told us what we heard was safe and effective, right? Is this safe and effective as well? I find this hard to believe, and this pseudoscience coming out, it's not the case. And thanks to Mark and all the others that have, and I've also reposted this on X. It is we are in a crisis right now in this country, and ultra processed foods is right at the center of this.
And, it's one of the things, I've talked to you offline a lot about my buddy and business partner, Gus Vickery. It's one of the things that he says often to both our listeners whenever he's on the show and just his patients is that, folks, look, you gotta realize right now the deck is stacked against you. And you just mentioned, I mean, the exact same behavioral scientists that got people to smoke when they shouldn't and continue to want to smoke more
Yeah.
are the same people that make you that they're the ones that realize that this MSG stuff is amazing. It will make people, the old commercials of you can't eat one lay. Yeah, that was designed. They knew you couldn't just eat one lay because they knew the
Of course.
science behind it. They knew what that MSG and those salts and fats would do.
Yep.
And so we live in this environment now. And it's crazy, man, that these quote, air quotes, big air quotes, reliable news sources will put out garbage like this.
Yep.
Why on earth would you even want to promote this? And I've always said this too, Tim. One of the things we talked about in business school a lot was the miracle of the 10-cent calorie. when it comes
Mhm.
to feeding a lot of people at a low price, we have crushed it. America is
Yep.
amazing at efficiency in that regard. However, there's also, like so many other things, there are unintended consequences. Whenever you this 10-cent calorie comes with some adverse impact, which is high cholesterol, hypertension, too much fat,
Mhm.
all these other things, inflammation. And to have a news source actually try to tell people, yeah, it's no big deal. But then again, we also live in a society where when you quote that statistic of the 41% people that are actually clinically obese, whoa, watch out,
Yep.
dude. You're shaming people. It's just kind of silly, man.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate thing. Have you ever seen this graphic? I love this one because it is a true representation of what America is dealing with right now. I'll go as far as say that this is psychological warfare, the food science that is being put out. If you've ever walked into a grocery store, I mean, I walked into a Publix here in Florida the other day, and I was immediately hit with Coca-Cola, cake, right? All these setups, like you had to walk around the Coca-Cola display to get to actually inside the grocery store. So this is number one. I mean, they know how to psychologically get you prepared when you walk in to say that is something that it's the real thing, right? That's the marketing, the advertising is definitely going in that direction. But when you look at the middle of a grocery store, this infographic that I saw, it basically said poison right in the middle of it because you're looking at all the ultra processed foods. You're looking at things that are in the cleaning supplies that are toxic, right? So you've got all these things in the middle, but guess where all the healthy food is? It's on the edges, right? It's on the where the vegetables are, where the meat counters are, where the freezers sometimes are in the back, sometimes they're in the middle. But at the end of the day, I mean, as you're weaving up and down these aisles, it is like you're being sucked in by all the advertising, all the quick hits, the quick fix. And there's no reason why that people are walking out with some very unhealthy things. And the unfortunate thing is that, the children are eating these as well, and it's causing this epidemic that is getting worse and worse, and it doesn't look like it's gonna stop. I mean, that is why, I am so vigilant about creating this new health paradigm, and we're putting that together inside of Mindshare. But at the end of the day, we know the challenges that we're facing with big healthcare. We know the challenges we're facing with big food, the way big health insurance has boxed us in, and big pharma. So, there are a number of things that we're having some real issues with that have to stop because at some point this nation is going to be 100% obese, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that, like, as I get more steeped in this stuff, and I've never been one to be an alarmist, I always try to maintain a really strong sense of rationality and not be kind of the chicken little. You mentioned going to the grocery store. What's crazy about going into the store and seeing some of these things is what you just mentioned. So much of it is geared toward children. And here's the thing I don't think that people are really coming to grips with, Tim, is that we don't, because you always hear the thing about, well, when I was a kid, and you and I are probably close to the same age. And when I was a kid, I used to
Uh-huh.
eat Pop Tarts for breakfast and everything I wanted. But yeah, here's the difference, though. Here, you have to recognize things have changed. We also got out in the sunshine. We went out and played outside with our friends. We were on a
Yep.
bike. We were crushing calories from the
Mhm.
time the sun came up till the time it went down. Our parents often, I don't know about you, but my parents growing up in rural East Texas would be like, hey, we'll see you. You'll be home before dark. That is not the case. These kids' lifestyle does not match up
No.
with the things they're putting in their bodies. And I think if more people would just do the research, just do the top line research of what the adverse impacts of these poisons and toxins and these additives and preservatives, what they can do to one's body, you would never, no rational human would put that in their child's body. Does
Mhm.
that mean they can't ever have a candy bar? No. Does it mean they can't ever have, some of the red dye stuff? No, but every single meal, you'll at least start to monitor it. And so with all of that kind of setup, so that these folks know that you and I are both kind of these guys that just really not only do we want to be healthy for ourselves, but we want to promote this idea to everyone else to at least educate yourself, understand what we're all up against. Now bring it to Mindshare, what you and your
Mhm.
wife JJ have built, because it is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, dude, to have you on the show is such an honor to me. To even swim in the soup that you guys are in, it means so much. And to be honest with you, it's a validation for me that obviously I'm on the right path on my health, wellness, and my promotion of that journey. To have someone like you on the Jason Wright Show, Tim. So just kind of talk about, when did you guys start to build your business of helping other people and bringing guys like me, Ben Greenfield, Mark Hyman, all of us together to create this ecosystem where we could all have, individually, yeah, we can make some noise. Collectively, we can truly move some mountains. So how did all this evolve?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and thank you, Jason, again. I mean, it's an honor to be on your show as well, and any opportunity I have to get the message out, not only about Mindshare, but about what's going on in the world of health. Because you mentioned JJ, it's JJ Virgin. For those of you who don't know, JJ is a four-time New York's best-selling author of diet books. She's got the Well Beyond 40 podcast. I mean, she's really focused on health. She always has been. She's a fitness Hall of Famer. And, when I met her 8.5 years ago, it really changed my life in many ways, from the personal health journey, but also a company that she started, Mindshare Collaborative, that was really built in the beginning to, help these independent entrepreneurial doctors, right? Or accredited health professionals, whether they're nutritionists, whether they're fitness instructors, whether they're functional medicine, integrative medicine doctors, doctors of chiropractic, right? It's these individuals that are really focused on growing their business. And the way they grow their business is they become an authority in what they do, right? Because a lot of them come to us and say, "Hey, I'm a woman's hormone specialist." Well, so is a lot of other doctors in this space. What are you really focused on, right? So it's about getting them dialed to really finding that one avatar, that one customer that when we know once they find that and they have a good foundation, they can build that business. And it's about getting their authority out there. It's about getting their name out there, whether it's through books, whether it's through podcasts, YouTube, whatever it may be. This is the company that these doctors and other accredited health professionals can come to and learn about business, because they went to medical school. They didn't go to business school. So that's an important part here. But what happened, as we know, what happened in 2020, 2021, there were a lot of changes. And of course, we've seen that there was a lot of canceling that went on. There was doctors in our community were canceled off Facebook because they said ivermectin, or they said, take vitamin D, or go out in the sunshine and go ground yourself in on the grass, whatever it may be. And that was anti-science. And we came together really and decided that this has to stop. And the way we do that is that we have to elevate this community in a bigger way. And let me first say this, is that, as a company, we are unapologetic for our doctors and our accredited health professionals making money. And here's the reason why. They are dealing with multi-billion-dollar conglomerates, pharma conglomerates, food conglomerates, social media, you name it. They are up against multi-million-dollar advertising budgets, and they have the deck stacked against them. And so we have to elevate them even more. We have to get them out there. They got to get their books out there. They got to get their podcasts out there so that the general population can find them. Because what we're seeing is that the promise of big healthcare is no longer about health. It is a sick care system. And the only way that you're going to fix health is that individuals need to, number one, take responsibility for their health, but also they need to go to a doctor that can actually spend time with them. Were you aware that a doctor in a big healthcare system has 5 to 7 minutes with a patient? And majority of the time they're walking out of there with a prescription, maybe 1 med, maybe 2 med, maybe 3 meds. Who knows? They may be going in there to resolve an issue that a medication has caused, that they're going to get another medication. So the idea here is to elevate this community so that individuals can find them and be able to get a real visit in, to have somebody spend more than a half hour with them, to do the right testing. I know you've done some amazing things with Dr. Gus, even when you did that podcast where, you did your test and Dr. Gus was analyzing it. These are the types of things that the big healthcare systems are not providing. And this is where individuals need to look at their health and say, I need to invest in this because I wanna see my daughter's graduation. I wanna see the birth of my grandchild. I wanna be a great-grandparent. These are things that when you start to think in these lines, you have to think about, "How am I gonna be able to do that?" And there's so many different things. I mean, we could spend hours talking about all the different avenues, but I wanna make sure that we touch on the high points.
So I tell you, you touched on a couple of things there that I'm really passionate about, not the least of which is this whole idea of sick care, which and I think that is, you nailed it. And for the folks listening, if you've never really dived into the American healthcare system, you generally hear things about access to care, very important. You hear insurance rates and you single payer versus marketplace. Here's the bottom line. The way we're structured, America does have the absolute best, most innovative, technologically advanced healthcare
Mhm.
system on the planet, bar none. However, as it is, it's just a business model. That hospital needs you to be sick to make money and to keep going. It's also the most expensive. Whenever you have a model that is based on sick care, taking care of you when you're sick, then it's just going to, by design, be more expensive than preventive care. And and that's what Tim and I are talking about is that and when you learn, and this is one of the things I always bring up with Gus is that I'm like everyone else, Tim. At one point, I was probably more of a vanity guy. I just wanted to look good and stay as
Mhm.
young as possible, as long as possible. But now it's more a case of economics. One, it's just expensive to get sick based on the lifestyle changes that you have to make, the cost of care. But two, I am getting to that age. I'm gonna be turning 50 next year, and that's kinda what Gus and I are working on. We're gonna try to keep me biologically below 50 as long as possible, and one of the things that I want is to be able to play with my grandkids and my
Mhm.
great-grandkids, and when I say play, I mean, I wanna be able to take them on hikes. Jimlyn and I, my wife, we love to travel, and we wanna take those babies everywhere we go. If we wanna go to the south of France, we wanna be there with them, and I wanna be on the beach at Club 55 in Saint-Tropez, and I wanna have a blast with them, and that's the thing, and I'm always amazed, man, at the things that we can do ourselves, and that's the thing, I always tell this audience, I mention it all the time, like, I'm like a cat that brings, like, the dead animals to your back door to kinda show the owner, "Look what I did today." That's really what, so much of my show is I get amazed when I learn these things from experts like you that have implemented them, and I wanna share that. I want so many people to know the agency that they have over their health, over their well-being. Now, one of the things that you mentioned too that I think is so important about the work that you and JJ are doing with Mindshare is you nailed it, and you just described Gus Vickery. This system is
Mhm.
set up against, in particular, primary care physicians who basically you come in and due to insurance constraints, Medicare, Medicaid constraints, they have a patient that walks in and the patient doesn't generally. Oh, okay. Let me just back up and tell you a great anecdotal story, Tim.
Great.
I two times this has happened in the last year. So I went to get my first ever colonoscopy because I've reached,
Mhm.
and by the way, people, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving you advice. However, your insurance will probably say, or you'll hear that you don't have to go till you're 50. I think, most experts are saying it should be much sooner these days. So I went when I was 49. And dude, they were so confused as to why I was there. I can't tell you how many people asked me, so why are we doing this? And I'm like, because I'm turning 50 next year. And that's what okay, but nothing's wrong, right? And I'm like, no, nothing's wrong. That's why I'm here is because there's nothing wrong. And it was just like they could, and then this, I'll be honest with you. This is where I get a little bit vain. I will fully admit it. I'm fully transparent. The nurse is checking me in and she's asking me about medications. You on statins, you on blood pressure medicine. And
Sure.
I'm like, are you kidding me right now? No, I'm not on those things. And then finally at the end of it, she says, do you ever go to the doctor? I said, "Yes, I do, at least once a year to get my blood work done and to check, just my checkup." She goes, "Oh, wow." And I'm like, it's crazy that I don't, because I don't think I should be an anomaly, man. I don't think I should
No.
be abnormal. And I also think from a legislative standpoint, from a healthcare standpoint, we've got to start shifting it so that people are more just naturally attuned to go to well visits, go to get
Yeah.
checkups. You mentioned the blood panel that I did with Gus. That should be just standard protocol, that people
Mhm.
go in and figure out where are your deficits? What are your epigenetic makeups so that, how is your DNA expressing itself so that we can kind of maybe tackle some of these big problems that might come in the future.
Yeah.
Let's tackle them today. And so I think what you guys are doing and the fact, and I'd like you to take us through, I want to park a little bit more on that entrepreneurial venture that a lot of these doctors, you nailed it. A lot of these physicians, they went to medical school because they wanted to care for patients.
Yeah.
They wanted to take care of people. They had big brains and they chose medicine. What
Mhm.
they're like my primary care physician, Tim, no longer practicing primary care. I just found that out. She's
Yep.
only doing elective medicine now. Guys like Gus Vickery will still do some primary care, but is mostly focused on precision medicine these days and
Yeah.
functional medicine because he doesn't want his practice driven by insurance companies. So right now, the
Right.
primary care space is really suffering. And I'm working with another company, Agility Holdings, of which I'm a part of. We're trying to fix some of that by bridging this gap between wellness and primary care physicians and getting people
Yep.
matched up and getting a good communication. But kind of talk a little bit more about how you take these physicians who did not sign up to be entrepreneurs. They signed up to practice medicine, but have now found themselves in this position where they almost, hell, they have to become an entrepreneur to survive. And
Yep.
then you're helping them take it not only just as a matter of survival, but a way to thrive in the health and wellness space, matching that with their expertise. How are you and JJ helping these physicians kind of travel that road?
Yeah, these are great questions, and I think the first one that you touched on, which is so big, is insurance. We've seen what has happened to insurance just over the last 10 years, and this is not, when you sign up for a PPO, you are not really in an elite group. You are in a managed care system. The insurance company is going to tell you what you can get, what you can't get, and the majority of the time they're going to reject, certain things that, maybe an imaging, a CT scan, a coronary exam, whatever it is. It's like I'm going to go get one. I have to pay like $117 for it because insurance won't cover it. Right? These are some very standard things, but what we've seen in our community is that the insurance companies do not like doctors who keep people well. And they will basically not pay them in many respects. Like they'll submit their bills. And when you're relying upon an insurance system to provide a substantial amount of your income, and the next thing you know, they change the game. This puts, this doctor's practice into serious jeopardy. So in many respects, they come to us saying, I need help. I'm underwater right now. And many of them are successfully stuck. They've got good clinics, they're brick and mortar, they're doing what they're doing, they're seeing their patients, but they're not able to break through because they're playing this game with insurance. So the unfortunate thing is the insurance company has forced a lot of these doctors, especially, your primary and Dr. Gus, to really get out of the game. And what they're doing is, and what we teach them is, if you're going to get out of the game, the most important thing is that you build a program that you can have one to many, right? Because the idea of one to one is just not working anymore. And the reason why I say that is because it's costly, as well as there are a large number of individuals that are suffering with chronic disease, and in many cases have 2 to 3 different chronic diseases that are a real challenge that honestly has been put upon them by the big healthcare system, by big pharma, by big food. So, this community is out there working with them, but they have to be able to expand their offering and to really make it available to many. And that's where, these types of programs are put into place where, they may even introduce a health coach into the environment, because the idea here is that they want to make sure that their patients and their clients are getting healthier, and they need to put a lot of attention on them, and they can't do it alone. The other side of it is that they need to get their name out there. They need to become an influencer, so to speak. And I sometimes don't like to use that word, but at the end of the day, if you go onto any one of these social media platforms, whether it's X or Instagram or TikTok, you'll see that there are doctors out there that are really promoting themselves, and they're promoting themselves because they have the opportunity to. They may have created a new book, they may have started a podcast, or they may be on a circuit, so to speak, where they're promoting their book. And this is critically important because they have to free up their time to be able to do this. If they're stuck in trading their time for money, they're working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week because they are the business owner. they're not going to advance. And they're actually going to be probably losing money at the end of the day because, if they're not taking insurance, then how are they going to go market themselves? They don't have they don't have those tools to be able to do that. So that's what Mindshare does. And it's really about getting more practitioners out there to be discovered. And what we're also seeing, which is unfortunate, we're seeing a tremendous amount of physician burnout. This is a real challenge, especially in the traditional world, which is for your listeners, it's called the allopathic healthcare system. And a lot of doctors are, quite honestly, they're stuck in that system. And they don't know how to get out because they would love to go out and actually become a doctor rather than a chart taker. And my history, just to let you know, it's 33 years in the big healthcare environment. I worked for 7 companies, selling into these environments, selling technology in these environments, working with these doctors, seeing the challenges that they were having and how the system was pressuring them to make sure that they're charting and they're hitting their star ratings and that they're getting in and out of the room as quickly as possible. And then they were treating symptoms. That's the biggest problem here. When you treat a symptom, you're basically just treating it with a medication. And that's why we're seeing pill stacking going on, right? Where an individual may be on 6, 7, 10 different medications at one time because there are things that are happening when they take these medications that they need to take another medication. It's almost the example of insanity, right? I mean, you keep chasing your tail here, trying to get yourself well, and it's not happening. So, if there are doctors out there that are stuck in the system, there is hope. If you really want to come and really learn how to grow a business, Mindshare is here for you because at the end of the day, we are here, to really take all the leaders, not only in the functional medicine, integrative medicine, but also bring all these companies that are involved, the supplement companies, the red light companies, the cold therapy companies, the sauna companies, all these different, therapies, including meditation and yoga and things like that should be brought into a daily practice. And we're creating a new health paradigm. This is the direction we are going. So, and I appreciate again, Jason, the opportunity to get this message out to as many listeners as possible because there is hope. And that hope is to really take control of your own health. And it's really simple when it comes down to it. If you just do these 3 things, number 1, make sure that you are eating protein. And if you're a vegan, it's going to be a bigger challenge to really get the right amount of protein into your diet. But the recommendation is 0.7 to 1 gram per ideal body weight. This protein is more satiating. When you're eating more protein, guess what you're eating less of? Processed foods, ultra processed foods. The second one is resistance training. That's one that is huge. It has shown a tremendous amount of health benefits. I was a marathon runner back in my day, and I wasn't able to build muscle. And there's a reason why. I found out later. It's like when you're running, you're actually losing muscle mass. So the idea here is to make sure that you're getting in resistance training and start very simple. If you're not used to this, get in and out of a chair, do a push-up, do a seated row, whatever it may be, a squat. Like you just have to get moving. And also the other one is to make sure that you're getting in at least 8 to 12,000 steps a day. If you're not used to that, try for 1,000, try for 2,000, just get moving. The last one is sleep. Sleep is so important that you have to make sure that you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. You are, maybe taking magnesium before you go to bed. That's an extremely important one. Shut down the devices. We've all heard it. Turn off the devices. Get a red light for your room. You can find these inexpensive red light bulbs that you can put into one of your lamps, and make sure that you're also blocking out all the light. I mean, it's amazing how many hotels that we travel to that they've got lights in the room. They've got literally you can see the light coming in from the outside. I don't know how individuals sleep. We carry sleep masks when we travel because we know it's horrible out there. And the last one is make sure your room is cold. We keep ours at 68 degrees, and you want to get a solid night's sleep. That is the solution right there. And there's so many other things that you could do, but those are the basics, Jason, that everybody should be taking and following.
And the thing that's crazy about this is most people could tell you I mean, even somebody like me that's a complete idiot when it comes to auto repair or anything like that, I can
Yep.
tell you, I'm still old school. I know it's kinda bumped up to 5,000, but you should get your oil changed every
Yep.
3,000 miles. You should rotate your tires every 8,000 miles. You know, there's these things that we know we will take better care of our car, and we know more of the metrics of how to take care of a car than we do our body. Those things you just rattled off, those should be things that people just ingrain in their memory, like you would taking care of your car. And there's a couple of things that we said through this conversation remind me of something I just saw yesterday. Did you happen to see Patrick Bet David hosted this debate with Chris Cuomo and I can't
Mhm.
remember what's the other guy's name that's he's got a big
Dave Smith. Yeah,
Dave
Dave
Smith.
Smith.
So you saw
Yep.
that?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay, for everyone listening, please, there was this little illness that broke out across the globe, and Chris Cuomo was probably one of the loudest voices in opposition of anyone suggesting you do any of the things that Tim and I are talking about right now to help at least maybe not prevent it, but to come through it quicker and to to hedge against adverse impacts. And dude, watching him still and look, I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. And again, I know he's desperate to kind of salvage his career at this point, Chris
Yep.
Cuomo, but at least he's willing to go on because this is what we're up against. Okay, you have a guy like Chris Cuomo who's now coming out on this very mild, yeah, I may have been wrong tour, and he's the only one. That's one of the things
Yep.
that was brought up. He's the only one that's willing to go, yeah, we probably destroyed some lives, but
Mhm.
we meant to do the right thing. And then you have headlines like, do you remember here? I guess it was about a month ago. The big headline, especially in our world, was intermittent fasting may not be good for you. It may cause heart
Right.
heart disease or whatever. Okay, so
Yep.
we have a media that will make basically be careful before you do any sort of intermittent fasting or calorie restriction, and yet that same media will tell you, but by the way, processed foods might not be bad for you. It's and like you mentioned ivermectin, which will probably get this, thrown off YouTube still to this
Yep.
day. And I remember whenever I had Dr. Michael Eads on, he's like, I'm not supposed to say this. And this is back before anybody knew what ivermectin was. But
Yep.
Dr. Eads, we were talking about this, and he said, look, he said, this is like one of the most profound um, um, therapeutics that there
Oh, yeah.
is. It is, I mean, the guy won a Nobel Prize for developing this. It's absolutely phenomenal. And he said, "You're not even allowed to say it." And this was before Joe Rogan or anything.
Yep.
And so I guess all of that is just to say, folks, again, the media, big food, like Tim has mentioned a number of times, it's all stacked against you. But there is hope. And here's the thing, too, and I'd like you to kind of weigh in on this, Tim. I see a silver lining in that guys like you and I, we're not MDs. I'm not a nutritionist. I don't know if you are. Uh,
Nope.
the most of the guys and gals, like your wife and like Mark Hyman, like Ben
Mhm.
Greenfield, and now Dr. Peter Attia, who's kind of taken it to
Yep.
the ultimate level of being a rock star physician. Um, but with the exception of Hyman and Attia and some of the others, there's finally this open-mindedness for the layperson, and why shouldn't there be? There's so much more information. You and I can go
Yep.
get on PubMed right now and check out everything we're talking to. Have you found that the doctors you're working with, are now more or just kind of the ecosystem that you're in and that you've constructed, that more people are open to just the lay expert that has actually done the stuff, and versus, and I think that's where this kind of elitist media crowd, they are still so credential obsessed. They're still and I'm that I look, on a lot of things, I will doubt myself about things that I absolutely know to be true because an expert may contradict what I think or believe. And so I have to check myself a lot. But I can tell you, on a lot of these matters of health and wellness and longevity and health span, even a country boy from Sulphur Springs, Texas, can figure this stuff out. And so, have you noticed that there's more of an acceptance for the lay expert, I guess, for lack of a better term?
There absolutely is, and I think the reason why is that they don't trust the system anymore. The white coat is no longer the authority, and they found that out when they walk into these exam rooms and they walk into these hospitals. They see a lot of sick people, and they're like, "What are these people doing here? They're not getting better; they're getting worse." And when they walk into the exam room, like I mentioned, the doctor only has a few minutes. They're seeing a nurse practitioner. They're asking you about what type of medications you're on. As soon as they walk in, it's like, "Oh, you have high cholesterol. Here's your statin." Right? "Oh, you have diabetes." And the reason why they have diabetes is because of the food that they've been eating. It's in the traditional health system, they've been boxed in. They've been boxed in by the insurance companies. And unfortunately, the doctors are there. They didn't learn about nutrition. I don't know if you're aware of this, but they probably got an hour or two of nutrition advice or science in their medical school. And medical schools are bought and paid for by big pharma, hands down. And it's unfortunate that the system has gone in this direction. So now individuals now are reaching out. They're getting onto platforms that, they can listen to the experts, like you made mention, the Mark Hymans, the Ben Greenfields, the Andrew Hubermans. Joe Rogan has a number of amazing guests that, he puts on the show, and they're learning more and more about this. But I think what we're figuring out is that, and listen, I'm turning 60 this year. I turned 60 in September. And, one of the things that I did over the last year is that I wanted to be in the best shape of my life. And I took this to heart, and through, some real simple things that I did, and I'll lay them out right now because I think it's important for everybody to hear this. Is that number one, as a late 50s male, I never got my testosterone checked. I found out that my testosterone was extremely low, so now I am, supplementing my testosterone, and it's been a game changer in many respects. But it's not the only thing. The other thing that I did is I took this protein challenge, but I had to do something first. I had to track my food. I had to track what I was eating, when I was eating, and how much I was eating. And this is about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, that I started on this. And here I am, a very athletic individual. I play beach volleyball at least once or twice a week when I'm home. I'm active. I'm in the gym. I'm lifting. I'm, on ellipticals, or I'm on a Peloton. I'm walking. And I went in and did a DEXA scan with JJ. She basically got in at about 11-12%, I think, or maybe it was in 10.5%. I checked in at 25% body fat.
Oh.
That is that is what is called a skinny fat.
Yeah.
Now, here I am, an athletic guy, like, how is this possible? I thought I looked good, but it's like, I've got some real challenges here. And it turned out that I was eating a lot of things. I was eating the meal before the meal, and I was eating a lot of fats and a lot of carbs that I should not have been eating, and not enough protein. So as soon as I learned this, I started tracking everything. I started tracking my protein. I started tracking the fats, the carbohydrates. I was hydrating myself more. And I went in 3 months later, and my body fat went from 25% to 18%. 3 months later, went from 18 to 14. And now I sit right around 10.5% body fat. I lost 27 pounds of basically fat, and I gained 24 pounds of muscle. It's because the results in the gym were exponential. Like, before, when I was lifting maybe at 60 or 80, I'm now lifting at 120.
Yeah.
And even going even bigger. So the results can happen. It doesn't take much to do this. It takes lean into organics as best you can. Cut down the carbohydrates, make sure you're getting clean sources of protein. And the most important thing, and we talked about the lab testing before, is that if your gut is inflamed, and it probably is because of all the toxins that you've been absorbing through food, through the vegetables, and everything else, that, environmental toxins, your gut is probably destroyed. And the only way that you can do this is by taking a test, finding out what it is, and going to a functional medicine doctor and figuring out how you can heal your gut. That's exactly what I did. I did a test. I found out that I was extremely allergic to gluten, such that I can't bring it into my diet again. I couldn't do dairy. I couldn't do soy. I couldn't do eggs. I eliminated those. And that's, by the way, that's JJ's book, is The Elimination Diet, the Virgin Diet. I brought all those foods back in one by one after, I think it was 4 to 6 months. And I started bringing them back in, and guess what? My gut was healed through working with my doctor, and now I'm able to have, good sources of dairy. I normally in the morning, I'm having a Greek style yogurt, a zero sugar Greek style yogurt. I do eggs every now and then when I'm on the road, but I've been solid. I have not, like, I keep myself between 174 and 178 pounds. I don't move outside of that range, basically with the things I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's not that difficult to do. And one of the last things is, are you aware of Brian Johnson? Do you know who
Oh,
he is?
oh yeah, sure. Blueprint guy.
Yeah. He spent millions of
Yep.
dollars, like, trying to figure out his health, like, all these machines and all these doctors, and guess what he found out? That the 3 things are very simple. Those are the 3 things I talked about,
Yep.
right? Eating
Yep.
right, exercising, and getting your sleep. Those things are all free for the most part. And so it's not, you don't need to hack your health and have $2 million spent or $3 million spent. Just do those things, and I guarantee you, you will start to feel better.
That's exactly it's funny you mentioned Brian because, Gus and I with Authentic Health, that's one of the things that we always use as kind of a muse to say, like, "Look," and I will commend Brian Johnson, he'll say this, like, "Look, I'm kind of like the Elon Musk of this space. Let me find out I'll spend all my money to figure out the simple things that everybody can do." So I don't and a lot of people kinda beat him up, but I'm like, "Hey, if we can all glean some of the stuff that he's doing by using himself as a guinea pig, that's pretty awesome." But Gus and I talk about it all the time. It's like, okay, the normal average everyday person, one, they can't afford to do everything that Brian Johnson is doing. And two, even if you go through some of his blueprint protocols, they can be pretty daunting. And so you got to figure out how you can do that minimum input for maximum
Yeah.
output. And that's what you just mentioned there. Those things that you just said, those are the minimum things you can do for that maximum output. It's also funny that you mentioned the 26% body fat. I went through the exact same thing, except it was kind of the opposite. I went whenever I was kind of a meathead where I was really lifting a lot of weights in my probably, I guess it's probably my early 30s, and realized that I was kind of muscularly fat. You know, I was, and what Peter Attia, he would put me in the quadrant of adequately muscled, but overnourished, you know. And so then I did what you did. My wife bought me a Peloton 5 years ago, and I thought, if I just crush all the cardio I can, and dude, for me, I'm 6'2", I'm a larger frame, and I got down to 186, which for me, I had not weighed that since, I guess, before I was in high school, probably. And at the
Wow.
time, I was 42. And I just looked emaciated. I always tell people I look like Matthew McConaughey from Dallas Buyers Club. It was ugly. And, but it wasn't until, and so this is like 5 years ago when I was just kind of really starting this whole kind of biohacker journey, figuring out
Mhm.
precision medicine and health and wellness to the extent that now I'm getting to talk to guys like you. And I started realizing every single thing, it was like an echo chamber between Peter Tia, Ben Greenfield, Andrew Huberman, Joe Rogan, you Tim Ferriss, you know, from back in the day.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
got to add lean body mass. And then my buddy,
Yep.
Michael Eads, that I told you that wrote the book Protein Power, he even said, Jason, he
Yep.
said, between cardio and lean body mass, as you get older, he said, VO2 max is always going to be a strong indicator of
Oh, yeah.
lifespan. He said, but you have got to have the lean body mass. You've got to get strong. I guess it was Pavel Tsatsouline. His advice is always get stronger. Period. Get stronger.
Yep.
What do you get? What advice would you give people? Get stronger. And so that's whenever I started putting some resistance training in to really building that lean body mass, and my body fat percentage started to just plummet. My weight, you know, would kind of balance. I would just literally
Mhm.
trade that lean body mass, that fat for lean body mass. And
Yep.
now that's where I'm focused. I was actually just a guest on a radio show last week where that's exactly what I talked about. It's like what you mentioned, and few people realize just how important getting this protein consumption is, and especially, and I guarantee your wife can attest to this, in women, we all lose muscle starting around 30, and then
Oh,
it
yeah.
really accelerates. But women
Yep.
get really hit hard with this lean body mass loss, and so that's something that I think if people would just realize these simple things you can do. Now, one of the things I did want to ask you about, what, because I just started back tracking my macros.
Mhm.
Another name we haven't mentioned yet is Lane Norton.
Yep.
You know, Lane,
Yep.
who's just a stud, Bio Lane. Folks, check out Lane's work. He's one of my favorite interpreter of medical research because he doesn't just cherry pick. He's like, okay, yes, this will get you the clickbait, but here's what's really in the study. And he's just a brilliant guy. and he's a macros guy. He's not all carnivore, and I think people are kind of moving away from the whole carnivore thing, especially with what happened with, what's the guy's name? Oh, I'm drawing a blank on Doctor. Oh goodness, that's his
Oh,
thing. You know who I'm talking about. That's just now coming back. It'll pop into my head in a minute. But because Lane Norton used to just take him to task all the
yeah.
time for the carnivore diet. But anyway, so
Oh, it's
Lane,
Saldino. Yeah,
there you
Paul
go.
Saldino.
There you go,
Yep.
Paul Saldino.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
I'm using MyFitnessPal now to track my macros and to log my food. What do you use to log yours? Do you just journal or do you use an app or what do you do?
So we use an app, Chronometer. It's a free app.
Okay.
We also have a scale, food scale. So we're weighing our food. We put them in, cups, half cups.
Yep.
When we read the labels, and by the way, everybody needs to read labels. Find out what you're eating.
Amen.
If you can't
Amen.
pronounce it, don't eat it.
And also, I want on that point, just because you think you're getting the natural, say, peanut butter, I don't eat that much peanut
Yeah.
butter anymore, but you think you're getting natural peanut butter, you better look because unless it says ingredients, peanuts, salt, or just peanuts, there's probably some
Right.
palm oil in there. There's going to be
Yep.
some sort of oil that you did that in your natural peanut butter. So check that out. Okay, so you're
Yep.
weighing your food. You're using Chronometer. I haven't checked that one out. I need to look
Yeah,
at that.
Chronometer is a great app, and you can set, like for instance, my breakfast, I have it all logged, so I pretty much eat the same thing when I'm home. I know it sounds kind of boring, but it's
No, it's great.
it's what I love to do, and I just hit one button and it just records it for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing too and I would just tell anybody out there if that sounds like just like you'll hear I can hear all already the people saying I don't have time to do that. That's just too much. What do you
Yeah,
no? At a minimum, folks, and I don't know. I think you probably agree with me on this one. Is the first thing to do before you get to where I mean, look, Tim is kind of a ninja at this point. Okay, he's advanced, but the first thing to do if you want to start truly taking control of your eating is just journal it and don't give
yeah,
yourself restrictions. Don't worry about macros. Don't worry about anything. Just write down what you eat.
mhm.
And the behavioral science behind that is so great because just by doing that, you will start to second guess yourself. It'll be eye opening because it's kind of this most researchers have shown that if you were to ask people how many calories do you eat in a day, they'll say like 2,500, 3,000, whatever. Almost over 80% of them are so far off. They're consuming so many more. So just journal it and then do that. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is are you doing testosterone replacement theory or are you just doing some natural methodologies? And if you are doing TRT, what form of it are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing injectable. I'm doing
Okay.
it 2 times a week.
Okay.
And my doctor, I'm checking in with him, pretty much on a monthly basis with his team, and I'm running labs every 3 months, and they're basically telling me exactly where I need to do, whether I need to up it or down it. For the most part, I've been downing it. Like, every time it comes in, I'm having to use less and less. It's because, a lot of the things that I'm doing now is increasing my testosterone naturally, especially the supplementation and the diet that I'm on, the exercise and things like that. So I'm stimulating, my body is just, like, working optimally right now, so I'm not needing as much, which is great.
How old were you? You're about to turn 60. How old were you when you started it?
Testosterone level?
Yeah. Or how old were you,
Um,
yeah, when you started using TRT?
oh, it was a year and a half ago.
Okay, so not that long.
No, not that long at all. See, like,
And
again, I was in denial. I'm like, "I'm in great shape." Like, I look great, and I'm like, "Uh-oh, my body is not in great shape." It was a wake-up call, and that's why it's so important to get, a DEXA scan, or you can find InBody. Like, there's a number of environments where you can go find these types of you need a baseline. You need to find out where you are, where you're storing your fat. It's not about total body fat, but it's about where are you storing it. And mine was, around my waist as well as in
same.
my legs. So, you have to find out where you are before you can decide where you wanna go.
And one of the things I would say about this, and that's the reason I asked your age, Joel Green talks a lot about this. And by the way, I just got through crushing a cup of pu'er tea because that's good for akromencia and
Yep.
and butyrate. And so, and I learned that from Joel Green. So again, some of the things that Tim talked about, Joel Green, who's a friend of the show, he wrote the book The Immunity Code, which will kind of take. It's almost like a reference book on gut health, although there's a lot of Marvin Singh, who's been on the podcast, he has
Mm.
a great book that will help you understand gut health. But I'm glad you brought up gut health, Tim, because so much of all of this starts. That's where Gus starts. Whenever we did a 5-part series on just kind of foundational health, always starts with the gut. And but the thing I wanted to know, the reason why I asked about your age is because when people go to the doctors, a lot of these primary care physicians, and I'm not beating them up, we were talking about them earlier, the ones that are making the transition into primary care, a lot of them are going into testosterone replacement theory or therapy. And I am not a physician. I'm not telling you what to do. Ask your doctor. But I think
Yep.
a lot of guys are getting this stuff recommended at younger ages when there are so
Mhm.
many natural things you can do prior to.
Yep.
And I know my MO is kind of, it sounds like what you followed. I don't do testosterone replacement theory. I keep saying theory, therapy. Although I had a physician that prescribed it to me when I was right before I turned 40, which is too young. And it was more for
Yeah.
mood and that sort of thing. And I had the pellets. And it just, and so once I started understanding health and wellness, I was like, of course, that was, I'm 49 now. I think I was like 37. And I did a round of that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm too young for this because your body then starts to depend on it. Right. And so
Mhm.
I think that it's not a bad thing, but my unmedical, this is what I'm doing for myself. I don't want to tell anybody what to do, and I certainly don't want to get in trouble for acting like I'm a doctor. Is my method is I'm going to wait as long as I possibly can. I think right the age that you are, Tim, is what Joel Green, a lot of Attia talks a lot about it. That it can be a game changer, and our bodies just come to a certain age where if you want to keep doing the other things for mitochondrial health and all these other things,
Yep.
it can be a great tool to have in your arsenal for longevity. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, you ought to look at everything, right? And of course, again, we're not here to give advice to anybody, but at the end of the day, you need to have this relationship with a doctor who understands the function of your body, the root cause of what's challenging. And we talked about gut health a lot. That your gut is, that is your, I mean, that's your center, right? That is where your metabolic system is. We can talk about mitochondria and things like that, but your gut is the most important thing. And you can do all the best things in the world for yourself, but if your gut is inflamed, if you have leaky gut, you're going to have chronic inflammation, you're going to have issues. Like those foods are not staying in your gut and being digested in a way that they should be and eliminated, and also delivering the nutrients, to your body where it's needed. So if you're doing all the best things, you haven't looked at your gut yet, then I highly recommend that you go get your gut looked at, because that could be, a big cost. Because once that's healed, as I made mention, the body really starts working again. I mean, the body is amazing how it can overcome a lot of challenges. And if you just clean up your diet and you get your gut like optimized, and you'll be amazed how fast things start to move for you from a health perspective. You have more energy, more focus, feeling better, looking better. I mean, that isn't that what we all want? And I think people just don't understand that there are alternatives out there, that they don't have to continue to go down the same route, because it's what's working right now. What they think is working is not working.
So one of the things I love to ask is maybe it's kind of a silly question, but I love to know people's routines. So, and by
Mhm.
the way, I got to tell you, man, I thought we were probably the same age. So, and you've got 9 or 10 years on me, dude. So you're doing a lot of things right, Tim. So well done, brother.
Thank you.
So, kind of
Thank you.
tell me what your kind of your daily, your weekly protocols for timing your eating, timing your sleep, and then also your training. I know that I'm going to hear something about some resistance training because we talked about the importance
Mhm.
of protein, but then there's also the resistance training to build a lean body mass. Now that you understand all of these things that you got to do to age well and really zero in on shortening those marginal years of life and extending the healthy years of life, what are the things that you do to make sure that you are hedging for that?
Yeah. No, great questions. But first, I'd like to say that, when I look at my age and I look at where I want to be, I never thinking about like, how long am I going to live? It really is about how long is my life going to be extended. And I use a very simple calculation. For every year I get old, so for instance, when I turn 60, my life extension is to be 120. I'm at the midway point. When I turn 61, it's going to be 122, right? So it's that calculation keeps happening. And the reason why that is that I'm thinking about, okay, how can I keep myself going for another 60, 70, 80 years? What are the things that I need to incorporate? And my routine is it's boring, but it's very simple. It's something that I've just leaned into. Of course, the most important thing is when we wake up, we have, for the most part, fasted for about 12 to 14 hours. And by doing that, we're eating probably around 6:30. And, we're not probably eating until 8 a.m. The first thing we do is when we wake up is we meditate. We'll meditate for maybe a minimum of 15 minutes, maybe a maximum of 45 minutes. It depends on, the amount of time we have. And then we just have time to, I don't jump on the phone yet. I just decide to read something, whether it's a personal development, whether it's something about, strength and exercise, whether it's about business, whatever it is. I want to fill my brain first with something good before I jump into the work mode. But also part of that morning routine when we're at home, because we are fortunate to have a cold tub here as well as a sauna. So one of the things I do, if you've ever seen those saunas, we love this one. It's one where you sit in it. It's almost like you're in like you're like a potato with your head sticking out. And it heats up to 150 degrees, like within a matter of minutes. So, we'll spend 15 minutes in that sauna and then we'll jump right into a cold tub. We'll keep it in the mid to high 40s. We're not ones that are like, let's get it to 32. I don't want to torture my body. It's the most important thing is that when you start shivering, that means your cold therapy is pretty much done. So that for me takes, about 5 minutes to do. And then we'll step into a front of a red light as well. We have a red light here that we can sit in front of. So those are things we're fortunate to have. But if you don't have any of these things, number one, the most important thing is get in a cold shower, throw some cold water on your face. You'll be amazed how well that works. So, and then we'll do some work, and then we'll normally head out in the gym in the morning because being business owners, we're working constantly, and so we want to make sure that we're basically blocking off the morning for ourselves. And so we'll go to the gym and we'll spend about 45 minutes to an hour there, and we'll do upper, we'll do lower. Like basically we're in the gym 5 to 6 days a week. And it's important for us to do that because it number one, it establishes a great routine, but also, we're there we're there getting our mindset right, because when we come back and we're ready to take on the day, and through the early evening, we have got a lot of energy, a lot of focus, and making sure that we're eating right. Now, from a food standpoint, my morning, boy, I'll tell you, I'm throwing so many things into my, I guess you could call it looks like cake batter at the end of the day, but there's
Same.
protein powder in there. There's creatine, which is extremely important. If you're not on creatine, everybody needs to get on creatine. I highly recommend this. It's one of the most, amazing supplements. It's been around for so many years and it's really inexpensive. Go find yourself a good, clean creatine. But I'll throw in some other things, some collagen, like I made mention. I'll use a Greek style yogurt. I'll even throw, some a protein drink in there as well to add the protein. And, my breakfast is probably dialed anywhere from 50 to 60 grams of protein. So that's a big, that is really a bolus, but I've worked myself up to that. And then throughout the day, we're making sure we're getting protein in every meal, that these are lean proteins. And then at dinner, it's, going to be a clean protein with some vegetables. I do very limited carbs, but, I've figured out my body. I know exactly what I'm doing on a day-over-day basis. Even when we travel with protein powders. We travel with a whisk and spoons and bowls. And, we take our home on the road. We even travel with a 12-cup coffee maker because we're using organic coffee, clean coffee, and we're not wanting to, go down to the Starbucks because it's extremely expensive. But at the same time, just having our routine on the road is extremely important because that's where a lot of people lose it. We work out in the gym every day as well. We'll find a hotel gym or we'll find a local gym. There's some amazing YMCA gyms. We found one in downtown Dallas the other day, which was absolutely spectacular.
Oh, yeah,
So
I've
there's
been
a
to that
lot of
one.
great places to go.
That's the T. Boone Pickens gym.
Yeah, the T-Boone Pickens one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were there for an event a few weeks back. So, it's really about making sure that you're staying on your routine day after day after day after day. And again, I know it sounds boring, but at the end of the day, like we have big work to do. And I don't want to be walking around with brain fog, with a destroyed gut, with inflammation, having to use a cane or a walker or, I don't want to live that life. And this is the way that I do it. You have to invest in your health, as I made mention earlier in the show. If you're not investing in your health, it's time to start. You made mention of it. People spend more on their TVs, on their cars, on furniture than they do on their health because, their health insurance says you can do this and you can't do that. It's time to start thinking differently.
I love that, man. And the thing that you mentioned that really resonated with me is the routine everywhere you go. It just and because it becomes like hygiene. I mean, somebody was telling me the other day, I don't know if it was a guest on the show or something. They're saying, like what we're talking about, this working out or training or whatever, it's really health hygiene. It should be as you're going to brush your teeth, you're going to shower. All these things need to be things that you just to not do them would be abnormal, and you mentioned too, like, on the road, that's one of the things that that has really just I feel so much better, and I try to make, every vacation that Jimlin and I go on kind of a wellness stay, like, we're headed to the Hamptons here in a couple of weeks, and we've rented a house out there, and I'm already thinking about, "Okay, what am I gonna take some bands? What am I gonna take to this is gonna be like a health retreat as opposed to just a vacation where I'm gonna eat like crazy, and it just makes it more fun. You feel so much better. One of the things that I wanted to ask you was like, what are some of those things that you do when you know you're going to be in a situation where food is sparse, you're going to be in a food desert? Do
Mhm.
you like implement some extra fasting? Are you constantly taking some like nuts with you? Like, what are you doing in those times to? Because I know you guys travel a lot. So,
Yep.
what are you doing to prepare for being just kind of trapped in the airport where everything is 10 times too high, way very
Yeah.
unhealthy. What do you do to prepare for those little moments?
Yeah, yeah, and then going on the planes as well, like the food
Oh,
they
it's
serve you, it's like
terrible.
it's disgusting. We travel with protein bars.
Yep.
That's an extremely important, that's been an extremely important part of our travel schedule, and there have been days where we've eaten 2 to 3 of them, based on the challenges that we've had, being stuck in airports, delays, cancellations, whatever it may be. You have to bring some good clean protein sources. That's number 1. We also travel with those little meat sticks. I forget the
Yep.
brand. They have the zero sugar ones, which are, 5 grams, I think, of protein. The bigger ones are 10 grams.
Mhm.
Again, I'm always looking to get 30 grams in a meal. If I can do that, that's the bare minimum for me. I'm always going to want to get myself to 180 to 210, depending upon my weight. But there may be challenges where you're not able to get that in. We travel with collagen as well. So, we'll put it in coffee. That's extremely important as well. So, it's important to travel with these things. Berries, we'll travel with blueberries as well. I mean, we want to make sure that that we're taking care of ourselves on the road. And one other point, you mentioned the bands. One of the things we travel with as well is the TRX. Are you familiar with
Oh,
those?
I just crushed
Yeah,
mine. So, I gotta tell you about my new move on the TRX. I saw Jay Gyllenhaal training for Roadhouse, which, so this is
yeah,
real scientific, folks. I'm having Jay Gyllenhaal body envy, and he was doing this workout where he's doing the reverse row and holding a dumbbell in one hand and, like, kinda doing this, core motion, and
yeah.
so, literally yesterday, Tim, I was down in my gym doing that, and God, it's a killer bit. So, yes, that's a long way of saying, yes, love them.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can, we bring them into underserved gyms, like ones that have like broken bikes and, like a couple free weights that are, the biggest weight is like 25 pounds. So we'll bring it into the gyms. We'll find out somehow to affix it to something, or we'll use it in our room. There's a door strap that you can do it as well. But you can get so many things done on a TRX that, you didn't even know was possible, and your body will be feeling it. So extremely important as well. So, I know it sounds a lot to bring a lot of these things, but at the end of the day, you have to prepare yourself for the rigors of the road or even, if you're at the office and you don't, you may not have the time, listen, everybody doesn't have the time to go to the gym 5 days a week. They have families, they have situations where they're dealing with, parents that they're taking care of. Like they don't have time to really step out and do these things, but there's a lot of amazing things they can do inside. like TRX, if you don't have access to a gym or you don't have anything in your house, you're living in an apartment. I mean, these are things that you can do. The other thing is, as I made mention, when you go to work, make sure you're traveling and that you're bringing, good, clean sources of protein. You're not going down to the restaurant. And I know being in corporate, I travel to Minneapolis or DC or Connecticut, wherever it may be, to go to these corporate offices. And it was a routine. Like at lunchtime, they'd bring in garbage, like because we were all there, or we would go out to a restaurant. And all there was high carbohydrates, high fat, and you just got to say no. At the end of the day, it's like my health is more important. Say no, and I'm gonna stay in. I'm gonna do this. Yeah, I may look like I'm boring. I may look like I'm antisocial, but at the end of the day, I'm taking care of my body. That's the most important thing that I hope that everybody who's listening to this just looks at this and says, it's time for me to stop doing what I'm doing. And I'll say this, it's time for me to stop eating like a teenager. And it's time for me to grow up and start eating things that are nutritious, that are healthy, that are going to reverse my disease. And listen, food is medicine. And I know that's getting a lot of it. That's being attacked a lot right now. And it has been over the last couple of years, but it is a real thing. And there was enough evidence out there that if you do those things, as I made mention, you will feel better and look better.
Amen to every single bit of that. Well, Tim, dude, we covered some ground here, brother. I mean, this is exactly what I wanted. I hope this was fun for you because I want to
It
I
was.
love to geek out with somebody who, so I had a lady on the podcast, a life coach, and I kept saying, look, I'm weird. I get it. Not everybody's going to do what I do. And she said, stop it. I don't want you to say you're weird. And I said, well, let me just put it this way. My methods are unique to me. And so it's good to geek out with somebody that one, yes, counting your macros and weighing your food and making sure and traveling with your own coffee maker. To a lot of the listeners, that will sound kind of like, wow, these guys are really nutty. And by the way, which coffee do you do? Purity coffee, or which one do you drink?
Yeah, we do Priority. Actually, they're going to be exhibiting at our big event in September in Scottsdale, Arizona this year. So they were one of
Okay.
the first companies I signed because I believe in their product. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Clean coffee, organic, like it is hands down one of the better tasting coffees. Absolutely.
Yeah, and they're good folks too. James
Yeah.
Quandall, he kind of introduced me to them. I want to get more
Yep.
involved with what they're doing and try to see if I can't help them out as well. But
Yeah.
people they hear these things, they think that, oh my gosh, these guys are nutty. But folks, I'm telling you, once you just start doing a little bit, then it leads to another thing. And then once you
Yeah.
start to wake up and realize, again, what I said early on, just how much agency we actually have toward health and wellness, just the fee,
Yep.
and that's why I talk about it so much. It's not to say, look at me, I've got it figured out, because God knows I do not. But I can tell
Mm-mm.
you this, by living a healthy lifestyle, you just feel I have become obsessed. It's why I don't drink alcohol anymore. It's not because of scruples. It's not because I think I'm going, I'm a good old Southern Baptist, and that has
Mhm.
nothing to do with why I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink alcohol because I'm more clear-headed. I sleep better. I recover faster. My inflammation is lower. I just have become obsessed with feeling good. And so to be able to have somebody like you on who gets that and who's taken that journey and is able to testify to the benefits of just some pretty practical applications for health and wellness. And man, you 10x. I think for what you do, for taking your own coffee maker or putting some meat sticks in your backpack when you travel, that small little impact, that small little input, the output of that will be a 10x on your overall life. I
Yep.
firmly believe that, especially compounded with all these other things we've talked about.
Yeah, especially the savings too. I mean, the amount of money you save by just doing
Dude,
these things,
yeah,
huge. And
100%.
and let me just say that, when you looked at like back in the age of natural grocers, right? And I'm going to the 80s, maybe the 70s. That was, they looked at them as crunchy. They looked at them as hippies. Like nobody was going to those stores. But of course, the grocery stores that we had back then that were for, non-natural food people, had some really good stuff in it. But now you look at it and hey, we see Whole Foods now, right? Amazon bought them for who knows how many billions of dollars that they purchased. Look at Sprouts, the growth of Sprouts. Look at all these different things. These were the wacky food places. These
Yep.
were the wacky natural grocers that are now mainstream. So, what we're talking about here, yeah, it may seem a bit on the edge, but guess what? It's going to become more mainstream as we continue on, because at the end of the day, we have no idea what's ahead of us right now. Some of the revolutions that are going on in health, like I've heard it a number of times, if you can keep yourself alive for 10 more years, there's going to be so much advancement in longevity and health because, we're cracking a number of things, especially the genome and, all these things that are now starting to roll up with AI. There's going to be some huge breakthroughs in health. So it's now time to get yourself prepared for that. And the best time to start is now.
Amen. All right, Tim, I want to respect your time. This has been awesome, dude. I could geek out with you all day. So tell people how they can keep up with you, find you. If you want to mention JJ's podcast, anything, dude.
Sure.
How do people get in touch with you and follow all of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way to follow me is on X. I'm at Tim Organ. That's ORGAN 11. So at Tim Organ 11. You can also find me on our website, mindsharecollaborative.com. That's MINDSHARE collaborative.com. And then if you're a practitioner and you want to follow the Health Business Growth Show, you can find us on Spotify as well as on Apple. That is the Mindshare podcast. And then if you want to hear more from JJ about the amazing work that she's doing and the guests that she has on, she has a podcast called Well Beyond 40.
Fantastic. Tim, this has been a blast, brother. Thank you so much for being on the show. Hey, folks, he's Tim. I'm Jason. Keep improving always in all ways. We're out. Well, that does it for this episode of The Jason Wright Show. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a Texas Titan Media production. Fourth Wall did the music. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Please consider going out to jasonwrightnow.com and signing up for the Vitruvian letter. Also, please go out to iTunes. It takes like 30 seconds to just leave us a 5-star rating. It does wonders for the podcast. I would be so grateful. And with that, until we meet again, go crush it and endeavor to improve always in all ways. I'm out.